The first thing I did was open my laptop and start making a list. I sat on the floor of the empty house, my back against the wall, and typed out everything I knew. The conference. The credit card charges. The text messages Mark must have received. The board meeting next week. The missing files. The clients who had vanished. I wrote it all down in a plain document, just facts, no emotion. It was the only way I could keep my hands from shaking. When I finished, I stared at the screen. The list was long. Too long for a coincidence. Too long for a simple misunderstanding. Craig had been planning this for months, maybe longer. And I had been so focused on keeping the company afloat, on managing the daily chaos, that I hadn't seen it coming. I closed the laptop and lay down on the floor. The hardwood was cold against my back, but I didn't move. I stared at the ceiling and thought about Mark. The way he'd looked at me in the kitchen, his eyes full of hurt and anger. He'd been so certain, so convinced. And Craig had given him just enough evidence to make it believable. I thought about our marriage. The early years, when we couldn't keep our hands off each other. The way he used to bring me coffee in bed on Saturday mornings. The way he'd hold my hand during movies, even when his fingers got sweaty. Somewhere along the way, we'd lost that. We'd become roommates. Partners in a household, not in a life. And then I thought about the other thing. The thing I hadn't let myself think about until now. The conversation I'd overheard in Craig's office 3 months ago. I'd been on my way to ask him about a budget issue, and I'd heard his voice through the door, low and secretive. He was on the phone. I couldn't make out all the words, but I caught a few. She doesn't suspect a thing. The timing has to be right. I'll handle her. I'd told myself it was about a client. A negotiation. Something business-related. But now, lying on the cold floor in the dark, I knew the truth. He'd been talking about me. I got up and made myself a cup of tea. The kitchen in this house was bare, just the basics I'd left behind when I'd moved in with Mark. I'd kept the place as a backup, a safety net I'd never intended to use. Now it felt like the only solid ground beneath my feet. My phone buzzed. I picked it up and saw Mark's name on the screen. I stared at it for a long moment, then answered. Sarah. His voice was strained. Where are you? I'm at my place, I said. The one on Oak Street. There was a pause. You have another house. It's not a house, I said. It's a condo. I bought it before we got married. I never sold it. I didn't know that. He sounded hurt, like I'd kept a secret from him. Which I had. But I'd kept it for practical reasons, not because I was hiding anything. It was just another example of how we'd stopped sharing things, stopped trusting each other with the little details of our lives. There are a lot of things you don't know, I said. But that's not the point. Why are you calling? I wanted to make sure you were okay. He paused. And I wanted to ask you something. Did you really stay at the Hyatt? I closed my eyes. Yes. Can you prove it? I can pull up my room charge. The conference registration. The receipts from the restaurant I ordered from. I didn't go anywhere else, Mark. I was working the whole time. I can show you everything. He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. Okay, show me. He sighed. I've been thinking. I called Craig after you left. He told me I was being ridiculous. That you'd never do anything like that. And that made me think. Craig told you I'd never do anything like that, I repeated slowly. He called you, yeah. He said he was worried about you. About us. He said I should give you the benefit of the doubt. I felt a cold rage settle in my stomach. Craig, the concerned friend. Craig, the peacemaker. He was playing both sides, manipulating Mark while pretending to defend me. It was brilliant, in a sick kind of way. Mark, I said carefully. Can I tell you something, and I need you to just listen. Don't interrupt. Don't argue. Just listen. Okay. Craig has been undermining me at work for months. I didn't see it before, but I see it now. He's been taking credit for my ideas, pushing me out of client meetings, making me look incompetent to the board. And now he's done something to make you think I'm having an affair. He's trying to destroy me, Mark. And he's using you to do it. The silence on the other end was deafening. I could almost hear him thinking, processing, trying to make sense of what I was saying. Sarah, he finally said. I know you and Craig have had your differences. But he's been my friend for 20 years. He was at our wedding. He helped us buy this house. He. Exactly, I cut in. He's been close enough to know exactly how to hurt us. He knows our weaknesses. He knows what to say to make you doubt me. And he knows how to make it look real. Mark didn't respond. I could hear him breathing, the weight of everything pressing down on him. I wanted to reach through the phone and shake him, make him see what was right in front of him. I'll send you the receipts, I said. And then I want you to think about something. Think about the last time Craig came over for dinner. Think about the way he talked to me. The way he looked at you when I wasn't in the room. I saw it, Mark. I saw the way he was setting you up. I don't know what you're talking about, Mark said. But his voice was uncertain, wavering. Think about it, I said. And call me when you're ready to talk. I hung up before he could respond. I didn't want to push. I needed him to come to this on his own, to see the cracks in Craig's story without me forcing it. The next morning, I went to the office. I walked in with my head held high, my laptop bag slung over my shoulder. The receptionist gave me a nervous smile. The office was quiet, too quiet. People were avoiding my gaze. I could feel the tension in the air, the way conversations stopped when I walked past. Craig was in his office. The door was open. He was on the phone, and when he saw me, he held up a finger, signaling me to wait. I walked in and sat down across from him, crossing my legs and folding my hands in my lap. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me rattled. Thanks for coming in, he said, hanging up. His voice was smooth, measured. I was hoping we could talk. About the board meeting. I'm sure you were, I said. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. Sarah, I know you think I'm the bad guy here. But I'm not. I'm just trying to do what's best for the company. And right now, the company needs stability. It needs leadership that isn't distracted by personal drama. Personal drama, I repeated. You mean the personal drama you created? He shook his head, a look of pity on his face. This isn't about me. It's about you. Your marriage is falling apart, and it's affecting your work. The investors see it. The board sees it. I'm just the one who's willing to say it out loud. Am I supposed to thank you for that? I asked. For being so honest, I don't want your thanks, he said. I want you to step down. Hand over your shares. Walk away, and I'll make sure you get a fair severance. You can start over somewhere else. Somewhere less stressful. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It came out bitter and sharp. You want me to quit? So you can take over the company I built with my own hands. That's what this is about. This is about protecting the business, he said, his voice hardening. I'm not going to let you drag it down because you can't manage your personal life. I stood up. I was done sitting, done playing his game. I'm not quitting. I'm not stepping down. And I'm going to make sure the board knows exactly what you've been doing. The conference you went to, the hotel you charged to my card, the text messages you sent my husband. I'm going to lay it all out for them. Craig's expression flickered. Just for a second. But I saw it. The doubt. The fear. He hadn't expected me to fight back. Good luck with that, he said, but his voice had lost its confidence. You don't have any proof. Not yet, I said. But I will. I walked out of his office and down the hall to my own. I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart pounding. I'd just thrown down a challenge, and there was no taking it back. From now on, it was war. The rest of the day was a blur. I spent hours combing through emails, bank statements, and calendar entries. I found more pieces of the puzzle. An invoice from the Marriott, addressed to Craig's personal email, but paid with the company card. A conference call that had been rescheduled without my knowledge. A client file that had been altered, the numbers changed to make it look like I'd made a mistake. It was meticulous, methodical. The work of someone who had planned this for a long time. And I'd missed it all, because I'd been too busy trusting him. When I finally looked up from my computer, it was dark outside. The office was empty. I gathered my things and drove to Mark's house. I still had the key, and I used it to let myself in. He was in the living room, watching TV. He looked up when I walked in, and I could see the exhaustion in his face. I've been doing some digging, I said. And I have proof. Not just of the conference. Of everything. The way he's been sabotaging me at work, the way he's been feeding you information. I can show you. Mark muted the TV and set down the remote. I looked at the receipts you sent me. The hotel. The restaurant. They checked out. Of course they did, I said. Because I wasn't lying. He nodded slowly. I know. And I've been thinking. About what you said. About Craig. And I remembered something. Last month, he told me you were thinking about leaving me. He said you'd talked to him about it, that you were unhappy. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I thought maybe you'd confided in him. But now you realize he was planting seeds, I said. Making you doubt me before he even set up the evidence. Mark rubbed his face with both hands. I'm sorry, he said. I should have trusted you. I should have talked to you first. Instead, I assumed the worst. And I let him get into my head. I sat down beside him on the couch. He was convincing. He's had years to practice. And I haven't exactly been the easiest person to live with. I've been distant. I've been stressed. I've been so focused on work that I forgot to focus on us. That's not your fault, he said. I could have tried harder, too. I could have asked you what was going on instead of just waiting for you to fix it yourself. We sat in silence for a moment. The weight of everything settled around us, heavy and real. But underneath it, I felt something else. A sliver of hope. So, what do we do now? I asked. We start by telling Craig we're not falling for it, Mark said. And then we figure out how to fix this. Together. I looked at him, really looked at him. The man I'd married, the man I'd drifted away from. He was still in there. We both were. We're going to need to be smart about this, I said. He's not going to give up easily. He's already planning to have me voted off the board. And he's got the investors on his side. Then we get them back, Mark said. We show them the truth. And we take him down. I nodded. It was going to be hard. It was going to be messy. But for the first time in months, I felt like I had a partner again. Someone on my side. We spent the rest of the night going over everything I'd found. Mark made calls, reached out to old contacts. He was good at that, the networking stuff I'd always hated. By the time the sun came up, we had a plan. It wasn't a perfect plan. It wasn't guaranteed to work. But it was a start. I left Mark's house that morning feeling lighter than I had in weeks. I had my husband back. I had a clear purpose. And I had a fight on my hands. But I was ready for it. I drove to my condo, showered, and changed into my best suit. Then I went to the office, walked past Craig's door without looking in, and started making my own calls. The game was on. And this time, I was playing to win. The first call I made was to my attorney. Her name was Diane, and she'd been my lawyer for over a decade. She handled the company's contracts, the employment agreements, the intellectual property filings. She knew my business inside and out. More importantly, she knew Craig. She'd sat across from him in enough negotiations to see past his charm. I need to meet with you today, I said when she answered. It's urgent. Sarah, you sound terrible. What happened? Craig's been running a campaign against me for months. He's trying to push me out of the company. He's manufacturing evidence, poisoning the board, and he's been feeding my husband lies to destroy my marriage. I need to know what my options are. There was a pause on the other end. Diane was not easily rattled. She'd built her career in corporate law, navigating the kind of cutthroat power struggles that made other lawyers lose sleep. But I heard her sharp intake of breath, the click of her keyboard as she pulled up my file. Come to my office at noon, she said. And Sarah, bring everything you have. Any emails, receipts, calendar entries, recordings. If you have a paper trail, I need to see it. I spent the morning gathering evidence. I'd already compiled a lot of it the night before, but I went back through my files with a fine-tooth comb, looking for anything I might have missed. Old email chains where Craig had taken credit for my work. Notes from meetings where he dismissed my suggestions in front of clients. The altered client file, the one with the numbers that made me look incompetent. By the time I walked into Diane's office, my laptop bag was overflowing with printouts and flash drives. Diane was waiting for me in her conference room. She was a tall woman in her late 50s, with silver-streaked hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She gestured for me to sit, and I dumped my files onto the table. Start from the beginning, she said. Don't leave anything out. I told her everything. The conference, the hotel charges, the text messages I suspected Craig had sent to Mark. The way he'd been systematically isolating me from clients and investors. The conversation I'd overheard, the one I'd dismissed as business. The board meeting scheduled for next week, where he planned to have me removed. Diane listened without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and steepled her fingers. This is serious, she said. If what you're describing is true, he's committed fraud. He's misused company funds, fabricated evidence, and engaged in a pattern of harassment and defamation. We have a strong case. Then why do I feel like I'm the one on trial? I asked. Because he's good at what he does, Diane said. He's positioned himself as the reasonable one, the one who's just looking out for the company's best interests. He's been laying the groundwork for this for a long time. But that also means he's made mistakes. People who are this calculating always leave traces. She pulled out a legal pad and started taking notes. First, we need to secure the evidence. I'll have my paralegal reach out to the hotel, get the original invoices and payment records. We'll subpoena Craig's personal accounts, and we'll get a forensic accountant to go through the company's books. If he's been siphoning funds or hiding money, we'll find it. How long will that take? I asked. A few days, maybe less. But we can't wait for the board meeting. We need to act before Craig has a chance to solidify his position. Can you call an emergency board session? I can try. But I'll need support. Most of the board members are loyal to him. They've been hearing his version of events for months. Then we need to give them another version, Diane said. We need to show them the evidence before they vote. And we need to get to the investors first. If we can convince them that Craig is the liability, not you, then the board will have to follow. I nodded. It was a lot to do in a short time, but it wasn't impossible. I'd been fighting uphill battles my whole career. This was just another one. There's something else, I said. Mark. He's on my side now, but Craig has been manipulating him for months. If we're going to do this, Mark needs to be part of it. I need him to confirm the things Craig told him, the lies he planted. It'll make our case stronger. Diane nodded. Bring him in. I'll want to take his statement. And Sarah, one more thing. If Craig finds out what we're doing, he's going to try to discredit you. He'll go after your reputation, your credibility, anything he can find. You need to be prepared for that. I've been preparing for it my whole life, I said. He's not going to win. I left Diane's office with a plan. It was rough and it was risky, but it was a plan. That evening, I went back to Mark's house. He was waiting for me in the kitchen, a pot of coffee brewing on the counter. He looked tired, but there was something different about him. A calmness, a steadiness that had been missing for a long time. Did you talk to your lawyer? He asked. I did. She thinks we have a case. But we need to move fast. Can you come in and give a statement? Tell her everything Craig told you, everything he said about me. Mark poured 2 cups of coffee and slid one across the counter to me. I can do that. But there's something I need to tell you first. I braced myself. I could feel the tension in the room, the weight of whatever he was about to say. Craig called me this afternoon, Mark said. He wanted to know if I'd talked to you. He said you'd been acting erratically, that he was worried about you. He said he thought you might be having some kind of breakdown. I felt a cold rage rising in my chest. He's trying to build a narrative. Paint me as unstable. I didn't buy it, Mark said quickly. I told him I'd already talked to you and that you'd showed me proof that he'd been lying. He went quiet after that. Then he said something weird. What did he say? He said, she's smarter than I gave her credit for. And then he hung up. I sat down at the kitchen table. My hands were trembling, so I wrapped them around the warm coffee mug to steady them. He knows we're onto him. That changes things. It does, Mark said. He's going to try to preempt us. He might try to accelerate the board meeting or leak something to the press. We need to be ahead of him. I looked at Mark. He was more engaged than I'd seen him in years. He was invested, committed. It felt like we were a team again. How did you get so good at this? I asked. The strategy, the planning. You were never this interested in my business before. Mark sighed. Because I didn't know how much you were carrying. I thought you were just focused on work. I didn't see the pressure you were under, the way he was pushing you. I was too busy feeling sorry for myself. And I let him use that against us. I reached across the table and took his hand. We both made mistakes. But we're here now. That's what matters. We spent the next hour going over the plan. Mark would come to Diane's office the next morning to give his statement. I would start calling board members individually, fill out their positions, see if anyone might be willing to listen before Craig got to them. And we'd both keep our eyes open for any sign of Craig trying to make a move. The next few days were a whirlwind. I made calls, sent emails, and had quiet, off-the-record meetings with every board member I could reach. Some of them were resistant. They'd heard Craig's version of events, and they were suspicious of me. But a few of them were open. They'd seen the way Craig operated, the way he'd climb over anyone to get what he wanted. They just hadn't had a reason to push back. Diane's team moved fast. They got the hotel invoices, which showed that Craig had booked a room under his own name and charged it to the company account. They found records of payments to the employee who'd altered the client file. And they traced a pattern of expenses that didn't add up, small amounts that had been siphoned off into accounts Craig controlled. On Thursday, we had the emergency board meeting. I walked into the conference room with Mark at my side. Craig was already there, seated at the head of the table, flanked by his allies. He smiled when he saw me, that practiced, professional smile that made my skin crawl. "Sarah," he said, "I'm glad you could make it. I wasn't sure you'd come." "I wouldn't miss it," I said, sitting down across from him. "This is going to be a very interesting meeting." The board members filed in, filling the seats around the table. Some of them looked curious. Others looked uncomfortable. I could feel the weight of their expectations, the scrutiny of their gaze. Craig opened the meeting with a summary of the company's recent performance. He made sure to highlight the challenges, the missed targets, the client losses. He didn't say my name, but he didn't have to. Everyone in the room knew who he was talking about. "Given the current circumstances," Craig said, "I think it's time we consider a change in leadership. Someone who can provide stability and focus during this difficult period." I stood up before he could continue. "Before we talk about leadership changes," I said, "I'd like to share some information with the board. Information that I think will change how you see the current situation." Craig's smile flickered. "Sarah, I don't think this is the time." "I think it is." I cut him off. I pulled out my files and started distributing copies of the evidence. The hotel invoices, the altered client file, the pattern of fraudulent expenses. "This is documentation of a coordinated campaign to discredit me, sabotage my work, and remove me from the company," I said. "It was orchestrated by Craig. The evidence is clear, and I have sworn statements to back it up." The room erupted. Board members started talking over each other, flipping through the documents. Craig tried to interrupt, tried to regain control, but the momentum had shifted. "This is ridiculous," Craig said, his voice rising. "These are baseless accusations. Sarah is clearly unstable." "I'm stable enough," I said. "And I have a lawyer who will be happy to confirm that this evidence is admissible. I've already initiated legal proceedings. I'm willing to pursue them all the way if I have to." Craig stared at me. His face was a mask of fury barely contained. For a moment, I thought he might actually lose his composure. But he was too good for that. He took a breath, forced a smile, and looked around the table. "Let's take a recess," he said. "Give everyone time to digest what they've seen. And then we'll vote." He didn't wait for a response. He got up and walked out of the room, his heels clicking on the floor. A few of his allies followed. I sat back down and let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Mark squeezed my hand under the table. "You did good," he whispered. "I'm not done yet," I said. The recess lasted an hour. I spent the time talking to board members, answering questions, reassuring anyone who had doubts. By the time we reconvened, I'd managed to sway a few more people. It wasn't enough to guarantee a victory, but it was enough to make it a close vote. Craig came back with a new strategy. He made a speech about unity, about not letting personal conflicts tear the company apart. He offered to step aside temporarily, to let an independent auditor review the claims. "Let's be reasonable," he said. "Let's not rush to judgment. We're all professionals here." I knew what he was doing. He was buying time, hoping to regroup and find another way to undermine me. But I was done waiting. "Or we've had months of reasonable," I said. "We've had years of Craig building his case against me. And now we have the proof. It's time to act." The board voted. It was close, closer than I'd hoped. But in the end, the majority voted to suspend Craig pending an investigation. He was escorted out of the building by security. I watched him go. He didn't look back. When the room cleared, Mark pulled me into a hug. I sagged against him, exhausted and relieved and terrified all at once. It's not over, I said. He's not going to give up. He'll find another way. Then we'll be ready, Mark said. We'll face it together. I nodded. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that we'd finally turned a corner, that the worst was behind us. But I knew better than to let my guard down. Craig was wounded, not defeated. And wounded animals were always the most dangerous. That night, I lay in bed beside Mark, staring at the ceiling. I couldn't sleep. My mind was still racing, turning over the events of the day, planning my next move. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I grabbed it, expecting Diane or a board member. Instead, I saw an unknown number. I answered cautiously. Hello, Sarah. It was Craig's voice. He was calm, almost pleasant. I just wanted to say congratulations. You played your hand well today. I underestimated you. What do you want? I asked. I want you to know that this isn't over. I've got a lot of friends, Sarah. People who owe me favors. People who will do what I ask. And I'm going to make sure you lose everything. Your company. Your husband. Your reputation. Everything. I've heard that before, I said. It didn't work. This time it will, he said. I promise you that. He hung up before I could respond. I sat in the dark, gripping the phone, my heart pounding. Mark stirred beside me. Who is that Craig? I said. He's threatening us. Mark sat up, his face hard. What did he say? He said he's going to make sure we lose everything. Mark took my hand. We won't let him. We got the evidence. We've got the board. We've got the law on our side. He can't touch us. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But as I lay back down and closed my eyes, I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd won a battle, not the war. The real fight was still ahead of us. And I had no idea what Craig's next move would be. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Craig's voice on the phone, calm and measured, promising to destroy me. I lay awake and replayed the conversation in my head, looking for clues I might have missed, trying to anticipate what he would do next. By dawn, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to wait for him to make the first move. I was going to take control of the narrative. Mark woke up and found me in the kitchen, already dressed and drinking coffee. He looked at me with a mixture of concern and admiration. You're up early, he said. I couldn't sleep. I've been thinking about Craig's call. He's going to try to go public with his version of events. Leak something to the press, or reach out to our clients, or try to turn the board against me again. I need to get ahead of it. Mark poured himself a cup of coffee and sat down across from me. What do you have in mind? I'm going to write a letter to the board. A formal statement explaining what's happened, the evidence we've collected, and the actions we're taking. I'll have Diane review it, and then I'll send it to every board member personally. It'll be a public record, something they can't ignore. Good, Mark said. But you need to be careful. If you come across as too aggressive, it'll backfire. Craig's been painting you as unstable. You need to show them that you're in control, that you're acting rationally and professionally. I nodded. That's the part I'm struggling with. How do I defend myself without sounding like I'm attacking him? How do I tell the truth without making it sound like a vendetta? Mark reached across the table and took my hand. You tell them what happened. Just the facts. No emotion, no accusations. Let the evidence do the talking. And you remind them that you've been the one keeping this company afloat, not him. I squeezed his hand. When did you get so good at this? After you left the other night, I did a lot of thinking. About you, about us, about the way I let Craig get into my head. I realized I'd been so focused on my own feelings that I wasn't paying attention to what was really happening. I'm trying to do better. I felt a warmth spread through my chest. It was a small thing, but it meant everything. The next few hours were a blur of writing, editing, and reviewing. Diane called in the morning to check on me, and I read her the draft of the letter. She made a few suggestions, tightening the language and clarifying the timeline. By noon, it was ready. I sent the letter to the board, and then I waited. The responses started coming in within an hour. Some were supportive, offering encouragement and expressing sympathy for what I'd been through. Others were cautious, wanting more details before they committed to a position. A few were hostile, clearly still loyal to Craig and unwilling to believe the evidence. I made notes on each response, categorizing the board members by their likely stance. By the end of the day, I had a clear picture of the battlefield. I had enough support to keep my position, but not enough to feel secure. Craig still had allies, and he was still dangerous. That evening, Mark and I went for a walk. We wandered through the neighborhood, past the neat lawns and well-tended gardens, and I felt a little of the tension drain out of me. It was a rare moment of peace, and I tried to hold on to it. "Have you heard from any of your friends?" I asked. "The ones you shared with Craig." Mark shook his head. "He's been careful. He didn't involve anyone else in the scheme. As far as I can tell, it was just him. He didn't want anyone else to know what he was planning." "That makes sense. He's always been good at keeping secrets." We walked in silence for a while. I thought about Craig and the years we'd worked together. We'd been partners, building the company from nothing. I'd trusted him, respected him, and he'd repaid that trust with betrayal. "Why do you think he did it?" I asked. "Was it just the money, the power, or was it something else?" Mark stopped walking and turned to face me. "I think he was jealous. He's always been the kind of person who needs to be in control, needs to be the best. And you were better than him. You built the company. You had the ideas. He was just riding your coattails, and he knew it. He couldn't stand that." I thought about that. It fit. Craig's subtle belittlements, his habit of taking credit for my work, his constant need to one-up me. It had always been there, but I'd been too focused on the work to see it for what it was. "I need to be careful," I said. "He's going to keep coming after me. I can't let my guard down." Mark put his arm around my shoulders. "You won't. And I'll be right beside you. We're in this together." 2 days later, I got a call from Diane. "Sarah, we need to talk. I've gotten a copy of a letter that Craig's been circulating. He started reaching out to major clients, claiming that you've been embezzling funds. He's included some fabricated documents as evidence." I felt my stomach drop. Embezzling? That's insane. The accounts are audited. There's no way he can make that stick. "He doesn't need it to stick," Diane said. "He just needs to create enough doubt to make clients pull their contracts. And from what I'm hearing, it's working. One of our biggest clients has already called to request a meeting." "How long do I have?" "Not long. This could damage our reputation beyond repair. We need to respond immediately." We spent the next few hours crafting a response. Diane drafted a formal letter to all clients, explaining the situation and providing documentation to refute Craig's claims. I called each of our major clients personally, apologizing for the confusion and assuring them that the business was stable. It was exhausting, but it was necessary. By the end of the day, I'd managed to calm most of the clients. A few were still skeptical, but they agreed to give me the benefit of the doubt. The next week was a blur of meetings, phone calls, and legal filings. Craig's accusations kept coming, each more outlandish than the last. He claimed I'd misused company funds, stolen intellectual property, and engaged in unethical business practices. Each time, we responded with proof, and each time, his claims fell apart. But the damage was done. The constant accusations were taking a toll. I was exhausted, and I could see the strain on Mark's face too. One evening, I came home to find Mark sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of whiskey. He looked up when I walked in, and I could tell something was wrong. "What happened?" I asked. "Craig called me today," he said. "He said he was sorry for everything. He said he'd gone too far, and he wanted to make things right. He offered to back off if we agreed to drop the legal case." I stared at him. "You're joking." "I'm not." Mark ran a hand through his hair. "I told him I'd think about it. Why would you even consider that he's been trying to destroy us? He's cost us clients and money and months of stress. He doesn't get to just say sorry and walk away." Mark met my eyes. "Because I'm tired, Sarah. I'm tired of the fighting. I'm tired of the fear. And part of me wonders if there's some truth to what he's saying. Maybe we should just move on. Let it go." I felt a cold anger rising in my chest. After everything he did. "You want to just forgive him?" "No," Mark said. "I want to protect you. I want to protect our marriage. And if that means making a deal with him, then maybe we should consider it." "Protect me," I said, my voice rising. "He's trying to destroy me. And you want to make a deal with him?" "I'm just saying we should think about it," Mark said. "We have options. We don't have to keep fighting every battle. I was so angry I couldn't speak. I turned and walked out of the room, out of the house, and into the backyard. The night air was cold and sharp, and I breathed it in, trying to calm down. Mark followed me outside. He stood a few feet away, waiting. Sarah, talk to me. I don't know what to say, I said. I thought we were in this together. I thought we were a team. And now you're telling me you want to make a deal with the man who's been trying to destroy me. I want to do what's best for us, Mark said. And right now, I don't know what that is. I turned to face him. Then let me tell you what's best. What's best is that we fight back. We don't give in. We don't let him win. We show him that he can't break us. Mark was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Okay, he said. I'm with you. I wanted to believe him. But there was a shadow of doubt in his eyes, and I knew that Craig was still in his head, whispering his poison. I went back inside and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were still shaking. We need to be smarter, I said. We can't just react to everything he does. We need to anticipate his moves and get ahead of them. How? Mark asked. I need to find something he cares about more than he cares about hurting me. Something he'll protect. And then I need to use it as leverage. We spent the rest of the night going over Craig's personal life. His business interests, his relationships, his habits. And we found something. He's been making investments, I said. Not through the company. Through his personal accounts. And they're not all legitimate. Mark looked at the documents on my laptop screen. How do you know? I found a connection. He's been channeling funds through a shell company to cover his tracks. It's probably not illegal, but it's definitely not something he wants the board to see. Then we need to expose it, Mark said. Not yet, I said. We use it as leverage. We let him know we have it, and we threaten to go public unless he backs off completely. The next day, I called Craig. He answered on the first ring. Sarah, he said, his voice smooth. I was wondering when you'd call. Cut the act, I said. I know about the shell company. I know about the investments. And I know you don't want that information going public. There was a long silence on the other end. What do you want? He finally asked. I want you to stop. The accusations, the threats, the harassment. I want you to walk away and never contact me or my family again. If you do that, I'll drop the legal case. I'll let you keep your reputation. But if you don't, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what you've been doing. You're bluffing, he said. You don't have proof. I have enough, I said. And I'm not bluffing. Another long silence. Fine, he said. You win. I'll back off. But this isn't over. Yes, it is, I said, and hung up. I sat back in my chair and let out a breath. It was done. Or at least, it was done for now. Mark came into the room and wrapped his arms around me. Are you okay? I'm okay, I said. I think it's finally over. We held each other for a long time. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. But I didn't let go of the anger. I didn't let go of the fear. Because I knew that Craig would be back. He wasn't the kind of person who accepted defeat gracefully. I just had to be ready when he did. The week after my phone call with Craig was unnervingly quiet. No threatening texts. No suspicious emails. No sudden leaks to the press or frantic calls from worried clients. It was the kind of silence that should have felt peaceful, but instead, it pressed down on me like a weight. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. Mark noticed. He noticed the way I jumped every time my phone buzzed, the way I checked the locks on the doors 3 times before bed, the way I couldn't quite relax even when we were sitting together on the couch watching television. You're still worried about him, Mark said one evening. It wasn't a question. Of course I am. He's not the type to give up. He's just regrouping, figuring out his next move. It's only a matter of time before he tries something else. Mark muted the television and turned to face me. Then we need to be ready. But we also need to live our lives. We can't let him control us from a distance. I knew he was right. But knowing something and feeling it were 2 different things. I'd spent so long in survival mode that I didn't know how to turn it off. The next morning, I went to the office with a renewed sense of purpose. The board had officially suspended Craig pending the investigation, and I was acting as the sole managing partner. It was a lot of work, but it was work I knew how to do. I threw myself into it, hoping that the routine would drown out the anxiety. It worked, for a while. I reconnected with clients, reassured investors, and started rebuilding the relationships Craig had tried to destroy. The company was still stable, still profitable. We hadn't lost as much ground as I'd feared. But then, on a Tuesday afternoon, I got a call from an old friend. Her name was Vanessa. We'd worked together early in our careers, before I'd started my own company. She was in the same industry, in a different city, and we'd stayed in touch over the years. Sarah, I need to tell you something, Vanessa said. Her voice was tight, urgent. I heard a rumor today. A bad one. It's about Craig. What kind of rumor? Someone's been spreading a story that you and Craig were having an affair. And that you were the one who tried to destroy him when he ended it. It's all over the industry grapevine. People are talking. I felt the blood drain from my face. That's insane. I would never, I know, Vanessa said. But the story is out there. And it's credible enough that people are taking it seriously. I wanted to warn you before it got back to you through someone else. I thanked her and hung up. My hands were shaking. Craig had promised to back off, but he hadn't. He'd just changed tactics. Instead of attacking me directly, he'd turned to gossip and innuendo. It was harder to fight. It was harder to disprove. I called Mark, my voice shaking as I told him what I'd heard. That bastard, Mark said. He can't help himself. He has to keep trying to hurt you. What do I do? How do I fight a rumor? Mark was quiet for a moment. Then he said, you don't fight it. You ignore it. You go on with your life and let people see the truth for themselves. If you try to defend yourself against every piece of gossip, you'll look guilty. But people will believe it. Some will. But the ones who matter won't. The ones who know you, who've worked with you, who've seen you in action, they'll know it's not true. And everyone else will move on to the next scandal in a week or two. I knew he was right. But it still stung. The thought of people whispering about me, making up stories about my life, felt like a violation. Over the next few days, I tried to follow Mark's advice. I went to work, made calls, attended meetings. I smiled when I needed to smile and kept my head down. But I couldn't help noticing the way people looked at me sometimes. The sideways glances, the sudden silences when I entered a room. One evening, I came home to find Mark waiting for me with a glass of wine. He led me to the couch and sat me down. Something happened today, he said. And I want to tell you before you hear it from someone else. My stomach clenched. What? Craig called me again. He said he wants to meet. In person. Just the two of us. Why would you agree to that? I didn't, Mark said. But I thought about it. And then I thought maybe I should hear him out. Mark, no. He's manipulating you again. You can't trust anything he says. I know. But I think if I go, I might be able to figure out what he's planning. Maybe get him to slip up, admit something we can use. I stared at him. You're not a spy. You're not good at this. He'll use you. Maybe. But I have to do something. I can't just sit here and watch him tear our lives apart. I took a long drink of wine and tried to think. Mark was trying to help, I knew that. But his methods were reckless, and he didn't understand how dangerous Craig could be. If you do this, I said, we do it together. You don't go alone. We both go. Mark hesitated. He said, just me. Then you tell him no deal. Either we both come, or you don't come at all. Mark agreed. The next day, he called Craig and set up the meeting. We were to meet him at a diner downtown, a neutral location where we could talk without being overheard. The day of the meeting, I was a nervous wreck. I wore a simple blazer and jeans, trying to look casual but professional. Mark drove, and I spent the whole ride staring out the window, trying to calm my racing heart. We arrived at the diner and found Craig already seated in a booth in the back. He looked up when we walked in, and for a moment, he seemed almost pleased to see us. Sarah, Mark, he said, gesturing for us to sit. Thank you for coming. We slid into the booth across from him. The waitress came by, and we ordered coffee. The whole time, I kept my eyes on Craig, watching for any sign of deception. Let's cut to the chase, I said. What do you want? Craig leaned back in his seat. I want to make a deal. A real one. I'm tired of fighting. I'm tired of the lawsuits and the rumors and the damage we're all doing to each other. I want to put this behind us. You're the one who started it, I said. You don't get to decide when it's over. I know. Craig's voice was quiet. And I know I was wrong. I let my ambition get the better of me. I hurt you both, and I'm sorry for that. I didn't say anything. Mark was silent too, waiting. I'm willing to walk away, Craig said. I'll resign from the board, give up my shares, and leave the company for good. I'll sign a non-disclosure agreement that prevents me from ever contacting you or talking about this again. In return, you drop all legal action. No more lawsuits, no more investigations. We both move on with our lives. It was a generous offer. Too generous. Why? I asked. What's in it for you? Craig glanced down at his coffee cup. I've got nothing left. The board's against me, my reputation's in tatters, and I can't afford a long legal battle. If I fight this, I'll lose everything anyway. This way, at least I can salvage something. I looked at Mark. His face was unreadable. I could tell he was thinking, weighing the offer against everything we'd been through. We need time to consider this, I said. Take all the time you need, Craig said. But I need an answer within the week. If we don't settle this soon, I'll have no choice but to fight. We left the diner and drove home in silence. When we got inside, Mark turned to me. Or what do you think? I think it's a trap, I said. He's up to something. He's never just given up like that. Maybe he's telling the truth. Maybe he's really done. He's not done. He'll never be done. He's been planning this for too long. He doesn't just walk away. Mark sighed. Then what do? We wait. We see what he does next. And we don't sign anything until we're absolutely sure it's the right move. The next few days were tense. I kept waiting for Craig to make his move, but he was quiet. No phone calls, no rumors, no leaks. It was almost as if he'd vanished. I started to doubt myself. Maybe he really was done. Maybe the fight had finally taken too much out of him. Then, on Friday, I got a call from Diane. Sarah, I've got bad news, she said. Craig's attorney has filed a counterclaim. He's accusing you of defamation and breach of contract. He's saying you made false accusations against him to cover up your own wrongdoing. That's a lie, I said. He's fabricating everything. I know. But it's going to create a lot of noise. And it's going to make the board nervous. We need to be ready. I slammed my hand down on the table. He set us up. The meeting at the diner, the offer to settle, it was all a smokescreen. He was just buying time to file this counterclaim. Mark walked into the room, his face pale. What happened? I told him. He shook his head, his expression hardening. He's not going to stop. He'll keep coming at us until we're broken or until he's broken. There's no middle ground. For a long moment, I just stood there, feeling the weight of it all pressing down on me. Then something inside me shifted. The fear was still there, but underneath it, a cold fury was building. Fine, I said. If he wants a war, then he's going to get one. And I'm not going to lose. I sat down at my computer and started typing. I pulled up every document I had, every email, every receipt, every piece of evidence. I organized them into a folder and sent them to Diane. I want to go on the offensive, I said. I want to file a counterclaim of my own. Fraud, harassment, defamation. I want to make sure everyone knows exactly what he's done. Diane called me back an hour later. I've reviewed everything. I think we have a case. But it's going to be expensive and it's going to take time. I don't care. I want to do it. All right, she said. I'll start drafting the papers. But Sarah, I need you to be prepared. This is going to get ugly. I know, I said. But I'm done running. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal filings, depositions, and strategy meetings. Craig and I were locked in a battle that seemed to consume everything. I barely slept, barely ate. My life had become a series of courtrooms and conference rooms, of late nights and early mornings. Mark was by my side through all of it. He didn't complain when I was too tired to talk, when I snapped at him over small things, when I spent hours on the phone with lawyers instead of spending time with him. He just was there, a steady presence in the chaos. One night, after a particularly grueling day, I broke down. I sat on the edge of the bed and cried, the tears coming in great heaving sobs that I couldn't stop. Mark wrapped his arms around me and held me while I sobbed. It's going to be okay, he whispered. We're going to get through this. I don't know how much more I can take, I said. I'm so tired. I know. But you're strong. You're the strongest person I know. And we're going to win. I promise. I looked up at him, my eyes red and swollen. How do you know that? Because I know you, he said. And because I'm not going to let him break us. No matter what happens. I leaned into him, letting myself feel the warmth of his body, the steadiness of his presence. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. And in that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let Craig win. I wasn't going to let him take anything else from me. I was going to fight with everything I had, and I was going to win. The next morning, I got up early and went to the office. I had a deposition scheduled for noon. I was going to walk in there and tell the truth, and I was going to make sure everyone knew exactly what Craig had done. I wasn't scared anymore. I was ready. The deposition was scheduled for noon, but I was in the conference room by 10. I wanted to be settled, to have time to breathe and center myself before the questions started. Diane was already there, organizing her files with the calm precision I'd come to rely on. You look ready, she said, glancing up at me. I am, I said. But I'm also nervous. He's good at twisting things. He's good at a lot of things, Diane said. But he's not good at hiding from the truth. And today, the truth is on our side. I sat down at the table and pulled out my own notes. I'd spent the past few days going over every detail of our case, every piece of evidence, every timeline. I knew this material better than I'd ever known anything. The door opened, and Craig walked in with his attorney. He was dressed in a sharp gray suit, his hair perfectly styled. He looked like a man who had everything under control. But I noticed the tightness around his eyes, the way his jaw was set. He was worried. That gave me a small sliver of satisfaction. Sarah, he said, nodding at me as he took his seat across the table. Good to see you. Wish I could say the same, I said. His attorney, a woman named Patricia, cleared her throat. She was a sharp, no-nonsense type, and I knew she'd be a formidable opponent. Let's get started, shall we? I'll be asking the questions. Please answer them as completely and honestly as you can. I nodded. Diane sat beside me, her pen poised over her legal pad. Patricia started with the basics. My role in the company, my relationship with Craig, the history of our partnership. I answered each question calmly, keeping my voice steady and my responses brief. Then she moved to the heart of the matter. Mrs. Miller, you've accused my client of fabricating evidence and engaging in a campaign of harassment against you. Can you provide specific examples? I took a deep breath. Yes. On July 15th, Craig used the company credit card to book a hotel room at a Marriott in Chicago. He then charged that room to my account and provided the receipts to my husband as evidence of an affair. I was attending a conference at the Hyatt at the time and have documentation to prove it. How do you know it was Craig who booked the room? I have copies of the invoices. The reservation was made in his name, and the card used was issued to him as a company officer. I've also obtained statements from hotel staff confirming his check-in. Patricia frowned, making a note. And what about the client file you claim was altered? I have the original file and the altered version. The altered version contains numerical errors that made it appear I had mismanaged the account. The errors were introduced after the original was filed. I have the metadata from the document to prove when the alterations were made. The questioning continued for hours. Patricia pushed hard, trying to find inconsistencies, trying to trip me up. But I had my answers ready. I'd gone over them so many times that they were practically engraved on my memory. At one point, Craig leaned over to whisper something to Patricia. She nodded and then turned back to me. Mrs. Miller, do you have any personal animosity toward my client? I have a professional opinion of him, I said. He's someone who tried to destroy my career and my marriage to further his own ambitions. That's not animosity. That's a statement of fact. Patricia pressed her lips together. No further questions. I looked over at Diane. She gave me a small nod of approval. We took a break while Patricia conferred with Craig. I stepped outside for some air, and Mark met me in the hallway. How's it going? He asked. Good, I think. She couldn't shake me. That's my girl, he said, squeezing my arm. When I went back in, Patricia announced that the deposition was over. We'd be moving to the next phase of the legal proceedings within the week. I felt a wave of relief wash over me as I gathered my things. Craig and I caught each other's eyes as we were leaving. His expression was unreadable, but I saw something in his gaze that I hadn't seen before. Respect. I didn't want his respect. But I'd take it as a sign that he knew he was losing. That evening, Mark and I went out to dinner. It was a small thing, just a quiet meal at a restaurant we used to love. But it felt like a celebration. Like we were finally starting to see the end of this nightmare. Sarah, Mark said, reaching across the table to take my hand. I've been thinking. After all this is over, I want to make some changes. I want to make sure we don't go back to the way things were. I looked at him, surprised. What do you mean? I want to work on us. Spend more time together. Actually talk about things instead of just coasting along. I don't want to lose you again. I squeezed his hand. I want that too. I've been so focused on the company and the lawsuit that I forgot what was really important. You. Us. We've got a lot of work to do, Mark said. But I think we can do it. I smiled. I think we can too. The next week brought a flurry of legal activity. There were motions and counter-motions, hearings and meetings. Craig's team was fighting hard, but they were losing ground. The evidence was too solid, the timeline too clear. Diane called me one afternoon with news. Sarah, Craig's attorney has contacted us. They want to settle. I sat down, feeling a mix of shock and relief. What are they offering? A complete withdrawal of all charges. He'll resign from the board and give up his shares. He'll sign a non-disclosure agreement and a statement admitting to the fraudulent behavior. In exchange, we drop the counterclaim. What's the catch? None, as far as I can tell. I think he knows he's going to lose. He's trying to salvage what he can. I thought about it for a long moment. I need to talk to Mark first. And then I want to meet with Craig face to face. I need to hear him say it himself. Diane agreed to set up the meeting. A few days later, I sat across from Craig in a small conference room at Diane's office. His attorney was there, but she stayed quiet. Craig looked tired. The fight had worn him down. You wanted to see me, he said. I did. I wanted to make sure this is real. That you're not planning another scheme. I'm not, he said. I've spent the last 3 months trying to destroy you, and I've lost. It's time to accept that. Why did you do it? I asked. I need to understand. I need to know why you tried to take everything from me. Craig looked down at the table. Because I was jealous. You were always the one with the ideas, the one with the vision. I was just the sidekick. And I couldn't stand it. So you tried to destroy me. I thought if I could take your place, I'd finally have what you had. But all I did was lose everything. The company, my reputation, my friendships. I've got nothing left. I studied his face. There was something almost like shame in his eyes. I can't forgive you, I said. I don't think I ever will. But I can move on. And that's what I'm going to do. Craig nodded. I understand. We signed the settlement that day. It was a simple, straightforward document. Craig gave up everything, and I walked away with my company, my marriage, and my reputation intact. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders as I left the conference room. It was finally over. The nightmare was finally over. Over the next few weeks, I focused on rebuilding. The company was stable, but it needed new leadership, new energy. I promoted a few of the younger employees I'd been mentoring, giving them more responsibility and trust. Mark and I started counseling. It was awkward at first, sitting in a therapist's office and talking about our feelings. But it helped. We started communicating better, spending more time together, making an effort to reconnect. One evening, we were sitting on the back porch, watching the sunset. Mark reached over and took my hand. Sarah, I've been thinking about something. I want to take a trip. Just the two of us. Somewhere we can get away from everything. A trip, I said. Where? I don't know. Somewhere we've never been. Somewhere that's just about us, not about work or stress or anything else. I smiled. That sounds perfect. We planned a trip to a small coastal town. It was nothing fancy, just a week away from the city, away from the phones and the emails. We walked along the beach, ate seafood at small restaurants, and talked. We talked about everything, our hopes, our fears, our plans for the future. I've missed this, Mark said one evening, as we sat on the beach watching the waves. I missed us. Me too, I said. But we're back. That's what matters. He turned to look at me, his face lit by the fading light. I'm sorry for everything. For not trusting you. for letting Craig get into my head. For all of it. I reached out and touched his face. We both made mistakes. But we're here now. And I'm not going anywhere. He leaned in and kissed me, and for a moment, everything felt right again. When we got back from the trip, I felt like a new person. I had energy, optimism, a sense of purpose that I hadn't felt in years. The company was thriving. Mark and I were stronger than ever. And Craig was a distant memory. I'd fought back against everything he'd thrown at me, and I'd won. But it wasn't just about winning. It was about reclaiming my life. It was about realizing that I was stronger than I'd ever known, that I could survive anything. I looked back on the past few months and felt a sense of pride. I'd come through the fire and come out the other side. I'd lost some things, but I'd found others. I'd found my strength. I'd found my voice. And I'd found my way back to the man I loved. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There were still challenges, still bumps in the road. But I was ready for them. I was ready for anything. That night, I sat in my living room with Mark, watching the sunset through the window. We didn't say much. We didn't have to. We were together, and that was enough. The future was uncertain. But for the first time in a long time, I was looking forward to it. The first month after the settlement felt like a slow exhale. I woke up each morning without the weight of dread pressing down on my chest. I went to work without scanning every email for hidden traps. I came home to Mark without rehearsing how to explain another crisis. It was strange, at first, to live without the constant tension. I kept waiting for something to go wrong, for Craig to surface again with another scheme. But he didn't. He'd signed the agreement and vanished from our lives as completely as if he'd never existed. One Saturday morning, I was sitting at the kitchen table with my coffee and the newspaper when Mark came in from the garden. He was covered in dirt, a trowel in one hand and a handful of fresh herbs in the other. You look like you're enjoying yourself, I said. I am. I'd forgotten how much I like getting my hands in the soil. It's peaceful. I watched him rinse the herbs at the sink, his movements easy and unhurried. He seemed lighter these days, more relaxed. The months of stress had carved lines into his face, but they were softening now, replaced by something that looked like contentment. We should have dinner with my sister next week, I said. She's been asking. And I think it would be good for us to get out more. Mark turned off the faucet and dried his hands. That sounds nice. It's been a while since we've seen her. Too long, I said. I've been so wrapped up in everything that I've let a lot of things slide. I want to fix that. He walked over and kissed the top of my head. We'll fix it together. The dinner with my sister, Laura, was exactly what I needed. She was younger than me by 5 years, with a sharp sense of humor and a no-nonsense way of cutting through pretense. She'd been a steady presence during the worst of the crisis, checking in on me even when I'd been too exhausted to call her back. Sarah, you look so much better than the last time I saw you, she said, hugging me at the door. You actually have color in your face again. I feel better, I said. I feel like myself again. We sat down to dinner, and the conversation flowed easily. Laura talked about her job, her kids, the chaos of her own life. Mark told stories about the garden and his attempts to grow tomatoes. I talked about the company, about the changes I was making and the new energy I was feeling. I'm thinking about hiring a new partner, I said. Someone young, with fresh ideas. I've been running the show alone for too long. That sounds like a good move, Laura said. Just make sure you vet them properly this time. I laughed. Trust me, I will. I'm never going to let someone get that close to the business again without knowing everything about them. The evening ended on a warm note, with promises to do it again soon. As Mark and I drove home, I felt a sense of gratitude for the people in my life who had stuck by me. Your sister's great, Mark said. I always forget how funny she is. She's been a rock, I said. I don't know what I'd do without her. We pulled into the driveway and walked into the house together. It was quiet, peaceful. I felt a sense of normalcy settling over me. A few weeks later, I made the decision to sell the condo on Oak Street. It had been my safety net, my backup plan, but I didn't need it anymore. I had my house with Mark, and I had a solid foundation under me. Are you sure? Mark asked when I told him. You've held on to that place for a long time. I'm sure. I don't need a backup plan anymore. I have you. I have the business. I have a life I'm not running from. He pulled me into a hug. I love you, Sarah. I love you too. The condo sold quickly, and the proceeds went into a joint account we'd opened for home improvements. We spent weeks planning the renovations, picking out paint colors and kitchen fixtures. It was mundane, domestic work, but it felt good. It felt like we were building something together. One afternoon, I got a call from Diane. She'd been monitoring Craig's activities as part of the settlement agreement, and she had news. I've heard that Craig is leaving the country, she said. He's accepted a position with a firm in London. He'll be gone by the end of the month. I sat down, processing the information. London. That's far away. It is. I think he's trying to make a fresh start. He's been through a lot, and I don't think he has many options left here. I didn't feel any sympathy for him. But I also didn't feel the anger I'd expected. I just felt calm. He was gone, and that was that. A good riddance, I said. Agreed, Diane said. I just wanted you to know. I hung up and went about my day. Craig was a chapter I'd closed. There was no point reopening it. The next few months passed in a blur of work and life. The company was doing well, better than it had in years. The new partner I'd hired, a sharp young woman named Elena, had brought fresh energy and ideas. We were expanding, taking on new clients, and I felt a sense of excitement that I hadn't felt in a long time. Mark had thrown himself into his own work. He'd taken up woodworking, and our garage had been transformed into a workshop. He built furniture, small pieces at first, then larger projects. He was good at it, and he was happy. Have you thought about selling some of your pieces? I asked one evening, admiring a table he'd just finished. I don't know, he said, running his hand over the smooth surface. I do it because I enjoy it. I'm not sure I want to turn it into a business. It doesn't have to be a business. But you could show them. See if anyone's interested. He smiled. Maybe. I'll think about it. On a cool autumn afternoon, Mark and I were sitting on the back porch, watching the leaves drift down from the trees. The garden he'd planted was still green, and the herbs he'd harvested earlier were drying in the kitchen. I've been thinking about what I want to do next, I said. With my life, I mean. Mark turned to look at me. What do you mean? I've spent so long fighting? Fighting for the company, fighting against Craig, fighting to keep us together. And now that it's all over, I feel like I need to figure out who I am when I'm not fighting. That's a good question, he said. What do you think the answer is? I don't know yet. But I want to find out. I want to do something that's just for me. Something that makes me happy. Mark took my hand. Then we'll figure it out together. Like we always do. I leaned against him and watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was a simple moment, but it was perfect. The next day, I went to the office and sat down with Elena. I told her I'd be stepping back from the day-to-day operations, giving her more responsibility. Are you sure? She asked. You've built this company from the ground up. I know, I said. And I'm proud of what we've accomplished. But I'm tired and I need to find a new rhythm. I'll still be involved, but I want to start easing into a different role. Elena nodded. I understand. I'll do everything I can to make the transition smooth. That evening, I went home and told Mark what I'd done. Are you sure about this? He asked. I'm sure, I said. I need to find out who I am outside of the office. And I think this is the right time. He smiled. I'm proud of you. That takes courage. The next few months were a period of adjustment. I worked fewer hours, spent more time at home, and started exploring new interests. I took a painting class, something I'd always wanted to try. I volunteered at a local animal shelter. I went for long walks in the park and read books that had been gathering dust on my shelf. It was strange, at first, to have so much time on my hands. But slowly, I started to find a new rhythm. One day, Mark came home with a small wooden box he'd made. It was beautifully crafted, with a hinged lid and a smooth, polished finish. Made this for you, he said, handing it to me. It's a memory box. For all the good things. I opened it and found a small note inside. It said, for all the memories we're going to make. I looked up at him, my eyes blurring with tears. Thank you, I said. We've been through a lot, he said. But we're still here. And we're still together. That's worth celebrating. I put the box on my nightstand. It would be a place for mementos, reminders of the life we were rebuilding. That night, As we lay in bed, I thought about everything we'd been through. The betrayal, the pain, the fear. And I thought about the journey we'd taken to get here. It hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. Mark, I said, my voice soft in the darkness. Yeah, I'm glad I have you. I'm glad we made it through. He reached over and took my hand. Me too. And I'm never letting go again. I fell asleep feeling safe and loved. The past was behind me. The future was ahead. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready to embrace it. The winter came in quietly that year, with soft snowfalls and long evenings by the fireplace. I found myself settling into a life I hadn't known I was missing. The frantic pace of the past had given way to something slower, more deliberate. I woke without an alarm most mornings. I made real breakfasts. I sat with my coffee and watched the birds at the feeder Mark had built. It had been 6 months since Craig left for London. 6 months since the settlement. 6 months since I'd stopped looking over my shoulder. One afternoon in early December, I was sorting through old boxes in the basement. I'd been meaning to clean out the storage space for years, and now I finally had the time. I found photographs from our early years together, wedding pictures, vacation snapshots. I found Mark's old college yearbook and a box of letters we'd written to each other when we were dating long distance. And at the bottom of the last box, I found a journal. I didn't recognize it at first. It was plain, leather-bound, with no markings on the cover. I opened it and saw my own handwriting from years ago. I'd started keeping a journal in my late 20s, a habit I'd abandoned when life got too busy. I flipped through the pages, reading fragments of my younger self. Hopes, fears, dreams. Small moments I'd forgotten. One entry caught my eye. It was dated a few months before Mark and I got married. I'm scared. Not of Mark, but of myself. What if I'm not good enough? What if I fail at this? What if I lose myself in trying to be everything for everyone? I don't know how to hold it all together. But I'm going to try. I'm going to try so hard. I sat there on the basement floor, reading those words, and felt a pang of recognition. That fear had never really gone away. It had just been buried under years of work and stress and survival. I'd spent so long trying to hold it all together that I'd forgotten to ask myself what I actually wanted. Mark found me there an hour later, still sitting on the floor with the journal in my hands. You okay? He asked, crouching down beside me. I found this, I said, holding up the journal. I wrote it before we got married. I was so scared. Scared of failing, scared of not being enough. And I realized I've been scared ever since. I just got better at hiding it. Mark sat down on the floor next to me. What are you scared of now? I thought about it for a long moment. Not the same things. I'm not scared of failing at work anymore. I'm not scared of losing the company. But I'm scared of wasting time. I'm scared of getting to the end of my life and realizing I spent it all fighting instead of living. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, so what do you want to do about that? I didn't have an answer right away. But the question stayed with me. The next day, I went for a walk in the park. The snow had melted, leaving the ground wet and muddy. The air was cold and clean. I walked for a long time, just thinking. When I got home, Mark was in the kitchen, making soup. The house smelled of onions and garlic. It was a simple, comforting smell, and it made me smile. I've been thinking about what you asked me, I said. About what I want to do. Mark turned from the stove. And? I want to teach. I've been mentoring young people at the company, and I've realized how much I love it. I love helping them find their way, see their potential. I think I could do that in a bigger way. Maybe at a community college or a business school. Mark's face broke into a grin. That's a great idea. You'd be an amazing teacher. You think so? I know so. You've got so much experience. And you're patient. You're good at explaining things. You'd inspire people. I felt a warmth spread through me. I'm going to look into it. See what's out there. Over the next few weeks, I reached out to a few local colleges. I met with department heads, submitted my resume, and started putting together a syllabus for a course I'd like to teach. It was exciting in a way I hadn't expected. It felt like a new beginning. Mark started selling his woodwork. It began with a few pieces he put on consignment at a local shop. Within a month, he had more orders than he could handle. He built a website, started taking commissions, and turned the garage into a proper workshop. "I never thought this would take off like this," he said one evening, showing me a custom table he'd just finished. "You're talented," I said. "I'm not surprised." He laughed. "Neither am I, actually. I just didn't want to admit it." The holidays came and went, quiet and warm. Laura and her family came over for Christmas dinner. We exchanged gifts, ate too much food, and sat around the fire telling stories. It was the kind of evening that felt timeless. On New Year's Eve, Mark and I went out to a restaurant downtown. It was fancy, with white tablecloths and candles. We dressed up, which we hadn't done in years. "To us," Mark said, raising his glass of champagne. "To us," I echoed. We clinked glasses and drank. The restaurant was lively, filled with people celebrating. But I felt like we were in our own little bubble. "This year was rough," Mark said. "But we made it. And I think we're stronger for it." "I think so too," I said. "I don't want to go back to the way things were before. I want to keep moving forward." "We will," he said. Together. At midnight, we kissed, and the world outside seemed to melt away. It was just us, starting a new year with hope and a sense of peace. The next morning, I woke up early and went outside. The world was quiet, covered in a fresh layer of snow. I stood on the back porch and breathed in the cold air. I thought about the journey I'd been on. The betrayal, the pain, the fight to reclaim my life. I thought about all the moments I'd survived, the ones I'd thought would break me. And I thought about where I was now. Standing in the snow, in a house I loved, with a man I loved, looking forward to a future I'd chosen for myself. I heard the door open behind me. Mark came out, wrapped in a coat, and stood beside me. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "I was just thinking," I said. "About everything. About how far we've come." He put his arm around my shoulders. "It's been a long road." "It has. But I'm glad I took it. I'm glad I fought for us. I'm glad I didn't give up." We stood there in the snow, silent and still. The world was peaceful around us. Later that week, I got a call from one of the colleges I'd reached out to. They wanted me to come in for an interview. The course I'd proposed was being considered for the fall semester. I hung up the phone and told Mark. He pulled me into a hug and spun me around the kitchen. "I'm so proud of you," he said. "I'm proud of me too," I said, laughing. The interview went well. I left feeling hopeful and excited. The dean told me they'd be in touch within the week. I didn't let myself get too attached to the idea. I'd learned not to count my chickens. But I couldn't help imagining it. Standing in front of a classroom, sharing what I knew, helping people find their own paths. The call came on a Friday afternoon. I'd been offered the position. Part-time, to start, with the possibility of expanding. I said yes without hesitating. That evening, I sat down with Mark and told him the news. He was so happy he nearly knocked over his coffee. "This is it," I said. "This is what I've been looking for." "It's perfect," he said. "It's exactly what you need." I felt a sense of rightness settle over me. This was my life now. Not a life of fighting, but a life of building. Not a life of fear, but a life of purpose. The weeks leading up to the start of the semester were busy. I spent hours preparing lectures, designing assignments, thinking about how to engage my students. It was work, but it didn't feel like work. It felt like something I was meant to do. On the first day of class, I stood outside the lecture hall and took a deep breath. I was nervous, but it was a good kind of nervous. The kind that came with excitement. Mark had driven me to campus and was waiting in the parking lot. He'd insisted on being there for my first day. "You've got this," he said, squeezing my hand. "You're going to be amazing." I walked into the classroom. The students looked up at me, curious, expectant. I set my notes down on the lectern and smiled. "Good morning," I said. "My name is Sarah Miller, and this is Introduction to Business Strategy. I'm looking forward to getting to know all of you." The class began. I fell into the rhythm of teaching, answering questions, leading discussions. The hour flew by. When the class ended, a few students came up to ask questions. I answered them, feeling a deep satisfaction. This was what I was meant to do. After everyone had left, I sat down in the empty classroom and let out a long breath. I'd done it. I'd started something new. Something that was just for me. Mark was waiting outside. He gave me a big hug and a kiss on the cheek. How did it feel? He asked. It felt right, I said. We went out for lunch to celebrate. Over sandwiches and coffee, we talked about the future. About the classes I'd teach, the projects he was working on, the house we were slowly making our own. I think this is the beginning of something really good, I said. I think so too, Mark said. We've earned it. As we walked back to the car, I thought about the journal I'd found in the basement. The young woman who'd written those words, scared and uncertain. She hadn't known what was coming. She hadn't known how strong she would have to be. But she'd made it. And so had I. Life wasn't perfect. There would always be challenges, always be setbacks. But I wasn't afraid of them anymore. I'd face the worst and come out the other side. I knew I could handle whatever came next. That night, I sat on the back porch with Mark and watched the stars come out. The air was cold and clear. I leaned against him and felt his arm wrap around me. Do you ever think about what we would have done if things had gone differently? I asked. Sometimes, he said. But I try not to. We're here now. That's what matters. You're right, I said. We're here. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. We sat in comfortable silence, listening to the quiet of the night. The past was behind us. The future was wide open. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't worried about what it would bring. I was ready for it. Spring came slowly that year, but when it arrived all at once. The daffodils burst through the soil in bright yellow clusters. The trees along our street leafed out in soft green. I found myself noticing these things more now, taking the time to appreciate them instead of rushing past. I finished my first semester of teaching with a sense of quiet pride. The students had been engaged, curious, eager to learn. A few of them had come to my office hours just to talk, to ask about my career, to seek advice about their own paths. I'd given them what I could, and they'd given me something in return, a renewed sense of purpose. Mark's woodworking business had grown steadily. He'd hired an assistant to help with the orders and was talking about renting a small studio space downtown. He was happier than I'd seen him in years, his hands constantly moving, always working on something new. We'd settled into a rhythm that worked for both of us. We had our separate pursuits, our shared time, and the knowledge that we'd come through the fire together. One evening in late April, we were sitting on the back porch, watching the sun sink below the horizon. Mark had built a new table for the space, and we'd set out candles and glasses of wine. I've been thinking, I said, about everything we went through. The betrayal, the fight, the fear. I used to think it was all a waste. All that pain for nothing. Mark turned to look at me. And now? Now I think it was necessary. It broke me open. I had to fall apart before I could put myself back together. And I'm better now. Stronger. More myself than I ever was before. He reached over and took my hand. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. I should have trusted you from the start. You're here now, I said. That's what matters. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the birds settling in for the night. The air was warm and soft, carrying the scent of fresh earth and new growth. I'm glad we made it, I said finally. I'm glad we didn't give up. Me too, Mark said. I don't know what I would have done without you. I leaned my head against his shoulder. You'll never have to find out. The last light faded from the sky, and the stars came out, one by one. I felt a deep, quiet contentment settling over me. The kind of peace that comes not from having everything you want, but from knowing that you have everything you need. Craig was gone. The company was thriving. My marriage was solid. I had work I loved and a future I was excited about. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better than that. It was real. I looked at Mark, at the man who had been my partner through the darkest days, and I felt a surge of gratitude. We had rebuilt our life together, brick by brick, moment by moment. And we had made something lasting. I love you, I said. He turned to me and smiled. I love you too. Always. We stayed on the porch until the night grew cool, then went inside together. The house was warm and welcoming, filled with the evidence of our life, the photographs on the wall, the furniture Mark had built, the books I'd started reading again. It was simple. It was ordinary. And it was everything I'd ever wanted. That night, I slept deeply and peacefully. I dreamed of nothing in particular, just a sense of lightness and ease. When I woke in the morning, the sun was streaming through the curtains, and Mark was already downstairs, the smell of coffee drifting up. I got out of bed and walked to the window. The garden was green and full of promise. The birds were singing. The world was awake and alive. I smiled and went down to join my husband, ready for whatever the day would bring. The past was behind me. The future was ahead. And I was finally, completely, at home in my own life.